In the aftermath of World War II, Europe lay in ruins, a somber testament to the horrors of war. But amidst the destruction, a new conflict began to brew. Not one of bullets and bombs, but of ideas, espionage, and endless tension. This was the start of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union, two ideologies locked in an existential struggle. On one side was the USA, championing democracy and free market capitalism. On the other, the USSR, promoting communism and state control. They were once allies, fighting shoulder to shoulder against the Axis powers. But now they eyed each other with suspicion, each believing the other's system inherently flawed and dangerous. As the victorious allies, they carved up post-war Europe among themselves at the famous Yalta and Potsdam conferences. However, these meetings were less about cooperation and more about laying down battle lines. Each move meticulously calculated to gain the upper hand in the shadow war that was to come. One key point of contention was Germany. Once the powerhouse of Europe, it was now divided into 4 occupation zones, each controlled by one of the victorious allies. But the seeds of discord were already sown. The French, eager to reassert their colonial authority, took a hard line on the Saar, an economically vital region. The British, focused on containing the spread of communism, backed the fledgling state of West Germany. Meanwhile, the Soviets, nursing their own war-torn economy, saw East Germany as a buffer zone and a source of cheap labor. And so, as the Western powers pushed for a democratic and capitalist West Germany, the Soviets installed a communist government in the East. It was a microcosm of the larger ideological struggle that was to define the next 4 decades. But it wasn't just Europe that was divided. The global stage was also being set. In Asia, the Japanese empire, which once stretched from Korea to the Pacific Islands, had been shattered. The U.S. occupied Japan, eager to mold it into a bulwark against communism in the Pacific. At the same time, China was on the brink of its own revolution. The U.S. supported the nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek, seeing them as a critical ally against Moscow's growing influence. In the face of this, the USSR forged new alliances. North Korea, previously part of a unified peninsula under Japanese rule, became a Soviet satellite state. Likewise, Vietnam, caught in the crossfire of the French colonial struggle, became a battleground for the superpowers. The USSR supplied arms and trained fighters for the Viet Cong, the communist-led guerrillas taking on the U.S. backed South Vietnamese government. Espionage played a crucial role in this shadow war. Covert operations, clandestine meetings, double agents, and hidden agendas became the norm. Think of James Bond or the recent series of Jack Ryan. Both are modern iterations of this era. Espionage during the Cold War wasn't just about gathering intelligence. It was about influencing governments, destabilizing economies, and even assassinating key figures. The CIA and the KGB, the shadowy organizations of the U.S. and the USSR respectively, were at the forefront of this hidden battle. One notable example was the defection of Klaus Fuchs, a German-born physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project, the U.S. effort to develop the atomic bomb. He passed sensitive information to the Soviets, giving them a significant advantage in the early stages of the nuclear arms race. It wasn't just high-profile defectors either. Ordinary citizens found themselves caught in the web of espionage as both sides sought to gather intelligence on each other's military capabilities, nuclear strategy, and overall strength. People's lives were forever altered when suddenly they were recruited as assets or worse, suspected of being a spy. But it wasn't just spies who were moving in the shadows. Nuclear missiles loomed as silent specters, capable of annihilating entire cities in minutes. The development and deployment of these weapons changed the nature of warfare forever. The threat of mutually assured destruction hung heavy in the air, ensuring that no nuclear attack could go unanswered. This meant that any potential conflict between the superpowers would be catastrophic for all involved. But it wasn't just the superpowers that acquired these deadly weapons. As more countries developed their own nuclear capabilities, The risk of a global catastrophe grew exponentially. Suddenly, a local conflict could escalate into a nuclear exchange in an instant. This led to a proliferation of nuclear warheads around the globe, creating a tinderbox just waiting for a spark. Beyond the exchange of nuclear threats, the Cold War was fought in the minds of people, in the realm of ideas and perceptions. Propaganda played a huge role in shaping public opinion and demonizing the enemy. Posters, films, and news articles presented a carefully curated version of events, stoking fear and often distorting reality. For instance, the U.S.-backed publication, The National Review, published articles painting the seemingly innocuous United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization as a hotbed of communist infiltrators. Meanwhile, Soviet-aligned publications like The Daily Worker presented a counter-narrative, portraying the U.S. as a decadent and decaying empire on the brink of collapse. This constant barrage of propaganda made it challenging to discern fact from fiction, leaving many questioning what to believe. And while most of us today can recognize propaganda for what it is, back then it was a powerful tool used to manipulate and control. The Cuban Missile Crisis of the early 1960s stands out as the most dangerous episode of the Cold War. When the USSR deployed nuclear missiles to Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. mainland, the world teetered on the brink of nuclear war. For 13 tense days, the fate of the world hung in the balance as American and Soviet leaders engaged in a high-stakes game of chess. It was a terrifying display of the stakes involved in the Cold War. A miscalculation, a technical glitch, or a rogue individual could have triggered a chain of events leading to global annihilation. The placement of missiles in Cuba was seen as a direct challenge to the U.S. and its vast nuclear arsenal. This was a clear violation of the unwritten rules of the Cold War and an escalation that neither side had anticipated. For the U.S., it was a threat to its national security and a test of its dominance. For the USSR, it was a chance to close the gap in nuclear capabilities and project power closer to American shores. This crisis highlighted the fragility of peace during the Cold War. Even the smallest incident could spiral out of control, drawing the superpowers into a conflict they may not have wanted but couldn't avoid. As we look back, it's hard to comprehend the gravity of the situation. The world was just a few miscalculations away from ending in a nuclear holocaust. The Cuban Missile Crisis remains a stark reminder of the dangers of brinkmanship during the Cold War. The space race was another aspect of the Cold War that captured the world's imagination. It began with the launch of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit the Earth by the USSR in 1957. This event sent shockwaves through the U.S. and triggered a massive investment in science and technology. Suddenly, the U.S. was facing the very real possibility of losing its technological edge and, with it, its dominance on the global stage. This led to the creation of NASA in 1958, a dedicated agency tasked with pushing the boundaries of space exploration. And so began the space race. It wasn't just about exploring the unknown or advancing scientific understanding. It was about proving that one system was superior to the other. Each milestone, whether it was launching the first satellite, sending the first astronaut into space, or landing on the moon, became a battle of one-upmanship. For the U.S., it was a matter of national pride and a way to showcase the superiority of its capitalist system. To lose would mean not just falling behind in technology, but also ceding the moral high ground. The stakes were high and the competition was fierce. Each launch, each mission was a step closer to winning the race and, with it, gaining the upper hand in the broader Cold War. Beneath the surface of the space race and the nuclear standoff, there was a hidden cost to the Cold War that most people don't realize. Secret experiments conducted by both sides had far-reaching consequences. Take, for example, Project MKUltra, a CIA program that experimented with mind control and chemical interrogation techniques. It was a dark and sinister chapter that involved unethical and often brutal practices. The goal was to find a way to manipulate and control human minds, a chilling prospect that raises ethical questions even today. Then there was the massive underground network of bunkers and fallout shelters. These were built to protect the population in the event of a nuclear attack. The mere existence of these bunkers was a constant reminder of the threat of annihilation that loomed over everyday life. They weren't just built for civilians. Government officials and the military also had their own secure shelters. The construction of these bunkers was a massive undertaking, involving everything from reinforced concrete structures to advanced filtration systems. So, while the Cold War may be over, its legacy continues to shape our world in ways we may not even realize. From the political divisions of Europe to the proliferation of nuclear weapons and the dark secrets of covert operations, the echoes of this era still resonate today. The question is, as we move forward, how do we learn from the mistakes of the past and ensure that the mistakes of the Cold War are not repeated? Or are we merely playing a new game in a never-ending cycle of conflict? You decide. If you enjoyed this video, check out my others on World War II or the Korean War. And if you want more content, consider supporting me. Thanks for watching.